Ollie looked up, but all he could see was a small patch of blue sky above the mud on his face. The dust was settling, and he noticed a bird flying high above. He focused on that as he felt warm blood running down his neck and a sharp pain in his head. His chest felt heavy, and he couldn't move his arms. Ollie knew he was going to die there, but at least it was in the place he loved the most. He had spent years in this forest making it safe. But more than that, it was the one place where he felt peaceful. Even now, knowing his life was almost over, he stayed calm. He had many good memories in this forest, and he was okay with dying here. There were much worse places to die, and Ollie had been in some of those places. As a veteran, he thought he would have died long before now. As his eyes started to close, he remembered another forest where he thought he would die too. He had been to some of the worst places in the world and had lost many good friends along the way. When he finished his enlistment, he was desperate for a place that would be quiet. He had been listening to explosions and gunshots for a long time and needed some peace. That was how he had come to live in the forest. He bought a beautiful piece of land that ensured he wouldn't have any neighbors who could bother him. He wanted to hear birds and other animals, and nothing much else. His land was still very wild, with no fences between his property and the rest of the forest, so he often saw deer coming close to his home and enjoyed the animals visiting. He wasn't a hunter at all. When he left the service, he put his gun down and didn't pick it up again. He had fired his firearm for the last time and wasn't going to do it again. Instead, he spent his time relaxing. Then they found out about a hiker who was missing. Ollie was not only a strong tracker but also certified in first aid. When the sheriff asked him to see if he could help, he agreed immediately. He couldn't pass up the chance to do some good. It warmed his heart when he found the man a few hours later. Everyone was grateful. Ollie knew the forest well and even started working with the forest rangers when they needed him. But Ollie needed time to heal, and he spent a lot of time walking on his own and enjoying nature. It felt like it soothed his soul, which was something he desperately needed. His life was a lot better than it had been in a long time and felt more in control. But one day, something would happen that would change his life again. One day, he woke up feeling better than he had in months. Usually low on energy, he was excited to tackle a challenging hike he'd always wanted to try. He packed his backpack with essentials, prepared for anything, even though he planned to return by nightfall. His habit of over-preparing stemmed from a lesson learned in his youth when he got caught in a storm during a hike and had to spend the night outdoors. As he began the hike, he felt free and relaxed, enjoying the day. But then, as he walked, he spotted something on a cliff that made his heart sink. Normally, seeing a lynx would have been a rare and beautiful sight, but this time, it filled him with fear. The stunning lynx was hanging over the cliff, dangling over the edge, holding on only to some tree roots coming out of the ground. There was nowhere for her to get a better grip. The ocean was right underneath them, but it wouldn't break their fall. Even if she landed in the water, she could get badly injured or stunned by the cold, and that was the best-case scenario. Right against the cliff, there were many rocks in the water, making it more likely that a fall would be fatal. Ollie knew he had to act fast. He approached the lynx carefully, not wanting to startle her and cause a fall. Unsure of how to help, he decided to use his backpack as a makeshift ladder, holding it out for the lynx to climb on. She hesitated, then reached out with one paw, but her other paw was stuck in the tree roots. Her mournful cry broke Ollie's heart, but he wasn't about to give up. Determined, Ollie put on his gloves and jacket for some protection, tied a rope around his waist, and lay on his stomach at the edge. Ignoring the risk of being scratched or bitten, he reached over and secured the other end of the rope around the lynx. She remained still, trusting him as he worked to ensure she wouldn't fall. After he tied her, he gently touched her paw to get her used to him. When she didn't flinch or react, Ollie pulled her paw and gently released it from the tree roots. She was free. He pulled back and helped her climb out by pulling on the rope and gently assisting her along. Finally, she was back on solid ground, but she just lay down, completely exhausted. Celebrations had to wait. The lynx was very weak. Ollie freed her from the rope and grabbed his supplies. Although she wasn't injured, she was too exhausted to move. He gave her water, and she drank deeply. Then he offered some beef jerky, which she eagerly ate. Gradually, she regained her strength, stood up, and walked away. Before leaving, she looked back at Ollie as if to thank him, then disappeared into the forest. Helping the lynx gave Ollie a sense of purpose. When offered a full-time position as a forest ranger, he eagerly accepted, finding new meaning in protecting the forest and its animals. He was content for the first time in years. But after a few years, a terrible storm hit, causing significant damage to the forest. Ollie and his team were stretched thin, helping animals and repairing trail cameras. While working alone on the other side of the mountain, Ollie was fixing owl boxes when disaster struck. The ground, weakened by the storm, gave way, and he was caught in a mudslide. The slide wasn't large, but it swept him down the hill, leaving him partially buried in the mud at the bottom. When the dust settled, he could see the blue sky and the birds flying, but only through a tiny hole. His colleagues wouldn't find him, not in time. Warm liquid ran down his neck, and his chest felt heavy. A sharp pain shot through his head. He couldn't move his arms. He knew that the few breaths he could take through the pain were going to be his last. But strangely, Ollie was calm. There were so many worse places to lose your life. Here in the forest he loved, he was at peace. He had worked hard for the animals and the people, and he felt good about the last few years. If this was it, at least he had built a life he was proud of. He wished he could see more of the forest, but at least he wasn't entirely buried in mud. He could see the sky, or he would have if not for the large yellow eyes staring down at him. A pair of cat eyes peered at him through the small opening he was in, fading in and out of consciousness. Ollie thought he was hallucinating. How else could the lynx he saved years ago be watching him now? Though he knew it was just his imagination, it was comforting not to be alone. As everything went dark again, he didn't notice the lynx starting to dig around him. She carefully uncovered his face, and through his haze, Ollie smiled at her, thinking it was all a dream. When he awoke, he felt the wind on his skin and realized people were pulling him out of the mud. They carefully handled his neck and spine, waiting for emergency services to arrive and transport him to the hospital. He was going to spend plenty of time there. They had to rush him in for an operation to relieve the pressure on his skull. He had brain swelling from the fall, and his neck was injured too. He had broken some ribs and his right leg. His arms were heavy because of the spinal injury, but with enough time, he would heal. It was nothing short of a miracle. When Ollie finally woke up and was conscious enough to understand what had happened, he realized how incredible it was that he was alive. His colleagues told him the story, and he was shocked. The lynx had saved him on a cliff. But what the lynx did next was even more astonishing. Ollie was stunned when he realized the lynx was real and helping him. She gently uncovered his face and dug around him, but sensing his injuries, she stopped and ran off for help. Covered in his blood, she found forest rangers and led them to the mudslide where Ollie was trapped. The rangers were amazed by the lynx's actions, but they quickly focused on saving Ollie. They cleared the mud, stabilized him, and rushed him to the hospital. Days later, Ollie woke up to his family and friends by his side. When he learned the lynx had truly saved him, he was overwhelmed with gratitude. After 2 months of recovery, he returned to his forest home, where the lynx appeared once more, as if to check on him. They shared a silent moment of understanding before she disappeared back into the woods, both knowing they had saved each other. Would you risk everything for a wild animal? Let us know in the comments section. Thank you.